Hey everyone! Welcome back to Native Speakers Channel. I'm Sarah, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Johnny. We're delighted you're joining us today as we have a highly practical topic that will immediately elevate your English conversations.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, today we're tackling something that I think a lot of English learners struggle with. How to talk about your hobbies and interests without constantly repeating, I like. We're going to share over 20 better, more natural ways to express your enthusiasm for the things you love doing. So whether you're into photography, cooking, sports, or reading, by the end of this conversation, you'll sound much more like a native speaker when discussing your hobbies.
Exactly. And Johnny, I have to say, this is something that even catches my attention when I'm having conversations with English learners. They'll say, I like reading, I like cooking, I like traveling, over and over again. And while it's grammatically correct, it just sounds so repetitive and basic.
Absolutely. It's like eating plain rice for every meal. It'll keep you alive, but it's not very exciting, is it? Native speakers use such a wide variety of expressions to talk about what they're passionate about. We have ways to show different levels of enthusiasm, different types of involvement, and different relationships with our hobbies.
Right. So let's start with some alternatives that show genuine enthusiasm. One of my favorites is I'm really into. For example, instead of saying I like yoga, you could say I'm really into yoga these days. It sounds so much more natural and shows that this hobby is currently occupying a significant place in your life.
That's a great one. And it has this sense of immersion, doesn't it? When you say you're into something, it implies you're somewhat absorbed by it. Another similar expression is I'm passionate about. This one takes it up a notch in terms of intensity. If I say I'm passionate about photography, it tells you that this isn't just a casual interest, it's something that genuinely moves me and matters to me on a deeper level.
Oh, I love that one. And speaking of intensity, what about I'm obsessed with? Now, this is definitely informal, and you'd use it with friends, but it's so common among native speakers. I'm obsessed with this new cooking show, or I'm obsessed with rock climbing right now. It's a bit hyperbolic, but that's part of what makes it fun.
Yes, though I should mention that obsessed is definitely casual language. You probably wouldn't use it in a job interview when they ask about your hobbies, but among friends, perfect. Another expression that I use all the time is I'm a big fan of. This works especially well for activities that you enjoy as a spectator or consumer. I'm a big fan of jazz music, or I'm a big fan of mystery novels.
That's true, and you can even modify it to show different levels of enthusiasm. You might say, I'm a huge fan of, or I'm quite a fan of, depending on how strongly you feel. Now, here's one that I think is really useful. I can't get enough of. This expression suggests that no matter how much you do this activity, you always want more. I can't get enough of hiking in the mountains, or I can't get enough of Italian food.
That's brilliant, and it has such a natural flow to it. Let me add another one. I have a thing for. This is wonderfully colloquial and often implies a slightly quirky or specific interest. I have a thing for vintage crime, or I have a thing for detective podcasts. It's like you're admitting to a particular weakness or attraction.
Oh, yes. And that one always makes you sound more human and relatable, doesn't it? Here's another variation. I'm hooked on. This suggests that something has captured your attention so completely that you almost can't stop doing it. I'm hooked on learning Spanish through language exchange meetups, or I'm hooked on playing chess online.
That's perfect, especially because hooked has that slight addictive quality to it, in a positive way, of course. Now, let's talk about some expressions that describe your relationship with a hobby over time. For instance, I've gotten into is fantastic for describing something that's become a newer interest. I've gotten into baking sourdough bread recently. Tells people this is a relatively new passion for you.
Exactly. And the present perfect tense there, have gotten into, really emphasizes that recent development. On the other hand, if you want to talk about a long-standing hobby, you might say, I've always been drawn to. This has such a lovely, poetic quality to it. I've always been drawn to painting. Suggests that this interest has been with you for years, maybe even since childhood.
Beautiful expression. Similarly, you could say, I've always had a soft spot for. This implies affection and warmth toward the activity. I've always had a soft spot for old black and white films, or I've always had a soft spot for gardening. It's gentle and nostalgic.
Those are wonderful for showing history with a hobby. Now, what about when you want to emphasize how much time or energy you invest in something? You could say, I spend a lot of time, which is straightforward but effective. I spend a lot of time restoring vintage furniture. Immediately tells someone that this is a significant part of your life.
True, and you can make it even more specific. You could say, I dedicate several hours to week to practicing guitar, or I invest quite a bit of time in my photography. The words dedicate and invest both suggest that you're putting valuable resources, your time and energy, into this activity because it matters to you.
Oh, that's a great point about word choice. The verb you use can completely change the impression you create. Here's another one I use frequently. I make it a point to. This shows intentionality and commitment. I make it a point to go running every morning, or I make it a point to read for at least 30 minutes before bed. It tells people this isn't just something that happens randomly, you actively prioritize it.
That's excellent. And if you want to sound even more committed, you might say, I'm committed to, or I'm devoted to. These are quite strong expressions. I'm devoted to practicing meditation daily shows that this is almost a discipline for you, something you take seriously and wouldn't easily give up.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about some expressions that work well when you're discussing the emotional or personal benefits you get from your hobbies. One of my favorites is, I find it therapeutic to. For example, I find it therapeutic to work in my garden. Or, I find it therapeutic to paint watercolors. This tells people that the activity provides you with emotional or psychological benefits.
That's lovely, and it adds depth to the conversation because you're not just saying you enjoy it, you're explaining why it matters to you. Similarly, you could say, it helps me unwind, or it helps me de-stress. Playing the piano helps me unwind after a long day at work is so much more interesting than, I like playing the piano.
Definitely. And here's another angle, describing how a hobby fits into your lifestyle or identity. You might say, it's become a big part of my life, or it's become part of who I am. These expressions suggest that the hobby has transcended being just an activity. It's now integrated into your sense of self.
Yes, and that's such a native speaker way of talking about hobbies that really matter to you. Another identity-based expression is, I consider myself a, you might say, I consider myself a runner, or I consider myself an amateur chef. This is different from saying, I like running, because you're claiming that identity.
Oh, that's such an important distinction. It's the difference between doing something and being something. Now, what about when you want to emphasize that you're actively improving or learning? You could say, I'm working on improving my, for instance, I'm working on improving my French through language exchange meetups.
Perfect, and that shows a growth mindset and active engagement. You could also say, I'm trying to get better at, or I've been honing my skills in. That word honing is particularly nice. It means sharpening or refining. I've been honing my skills in digital illustration. Sounds so much more sophisticated than I like digital illustration.
It really does. Here's another one that shows enthusiasm. I jump at any chance to. This expression conveys eagerness and readiness. I jump at any chance to go sailing, or I jump at any chance to attend live concerts. It suggests you're always ready and willing when the opportunity arises.
Love that one. And similarly, you might say, I never miss an opportunity to, or I seize every opportunity to. These are all variations on the same theme of showing that you're proactive about pursuing your interests. I never miss an opportunity to try new hiking trails. Tells people you're genuinely eager about this activity.
Right. Now, let's talk about some expressions that work well in more casual conversations. One that I hear all the time is, I'm all about. This is very informal, but super natural. I'm all about that plant-based lifestyle. Or, I'm all about trying new coffee shops. It's enthusiastic and laid back at the same time.
Yes, that's definitely got a casual, friendly vibe. Another informal one is I'm crazy about, or I'm mad about, if you're speaking with British English speakers. I'm crazy about Formula One racing, or I'm mad about cricket. These show strong enthusiasm.
Exactly. And here's one more casual expression. I get a kick out of. This means you derive pleasure or excitement from something. I get a kick out of solving crossword puzzles. Or I get a kick out of trying to cook complicated recipes. It's fun and conversational.
That's great. Now, I think we should also mention some expressions for when you want to talk about hobbies you've tried, but perhaps aren't as passionate about. Not everything needs to be expressed with maximum enthusiasm. Sometimes you might say, I dabble in, to suggest you do something occasionally, but not seriously. I dabble in watercolor painting means you do it sometimes, but you're not deeply committed.
Oh, that's such a useful expression. It's honest without being negative. You could also say, I'm somewhat interested in, or I have a passing interest in. These show mild interest without overstating your enthusiasm. There's nothing wrong with being honest about the level of your engagement.
Absolutely. And sometimes you might say, I enjoy the occasional. For instance, I enjoy the occasional round of golf. Tells people you do it sometimes, but it's not a major hobby. This is more accurate than saying, I like golf if you only play a few times a year.
That's a really good point about accuracy and honesty. Now, before we wrap up, I want to mention a few expressions that are great for when someone asks you about your hobbies in professional settings, like job interviews. You might want to sound enthusiastic, but also somewhat professional. In those cases, I'm an avid works beautifully. I'm an avid reader, or I'm an avid cyclist. Sounds educated and committed without being overly casual.
Excellent choice for professional contexts. You could also say, I'm particularly interested in, or I have a keen interest in. These maintain a professional tone while still conveying genuine enthusiasm. I have a keen interest in sustainable gardening practices sounds much better in an interview than I'm obsessed with gardening.
Exactly. Tone and context are everything. And you know what else is really useful? Being able to describe the frequency or regularity of your hobbies. Instead of just saying you like something, you could say, I regularly practice, or I make a habit of. For example, I regularly practice yoga 3 times a week. Gives much more information than I like yoga.
That's so true. And speaking of providing more detail, native speakers often naturally expand on their hobbies by explaining the why or the how. When you say, I'm passionate about rock climbing because it challenges me both physically and mentally, you're not just stating an interest. You're telling a story about your relationship with that activity.
Oh, I love that you brought that up. That's really the secret to sounding natural when talking about hobbies. It's not just about replacing I like with fancier expressions. It's about opening up and sharing what these activities mean to you. When you say, photography allows me to see the world differently, or Cooking is my creative outlet after a day of analytical work. You're giving people insight into who you are.
Exactly. And that's what makes conversations interesting. Nobody wants to hear a list of hobbies. They want to understand why those things matter to you. The expressions we've talked about today, from I'm really into to I'm passionate about to I'm obsessed with, they all help you paint a fuller picture of your relationship with your interests.
Right, and I think it's worth pointing out that different expressions work in different contexts. I'm obsessed with is perfect for chatting with friends over coffee, but I have a keen interest in is better for a networking event. Being able to adjust your language to the situation is part of being fluent.
Absolutely. And that flexibility comes with practice and exposure. The more you listen to native speakers talking about their hobbies, the more you'll notice these patterns and expressions. Pay attention to podcasts, YouTube videos, or conversations around you, and you'll start to pick up even more variations.
That's such good advice. And for our listeners today, I'd encourage you to try using at least 3 or 4 of these expressions this week. Don't try to memorize all of them at once, just pick the ones that feel most natural to you and start incorporating them into your conversations.
Yes, and remember that it's not about sounding fancy or complicated, it's about sounding natural and expressing yourself more precisely. When you say, I'm really into photography instead of, I like photography, you're not using more difficult English, you're just using more natural English.
Exactly. And that naturalness is what helps you connect with native speakers and have more engaging conversations. People respond better when you sound genuinely enthusiastic and specific about your interests rather than giving generic answers.
Well said. So to recap quickly, we've covered expressions showing enthusiasm, like I'm really into, I'm passionate about, and I'm obsessed with. We've talked about expressions that show your relationship with a hobby over time, like I've gotten into and I've always been drawn to. We've discussed ways to emphasize commitment, like I dedicate time to and I'm devoted to. And we've shared casual expressions like I'm all about and I get a kick out of.
And don't forget the professional options like I'm an avid and I have a keen interest in, as well as the more measured expressions like I dabble in for when you want to be honest about moderate interest. There's nothing wrong with having a variety of expressions in your toolkit.
Perfect summary, Sarah. And I think what we really want listeners to take away is this. Language is about communication, connection, and expression. The richer your vocabulary for talking about things you care about, the more you can share who you really are with the people you're talking to.
Beautifully put. And remember, everyone, hobbies are usually a fun, low-pressure topic of conversation. This is a great place to practice these expressions because people generally love talking about things they enjoy. So don't be shy about using these new phrases. Most people will be interested in what you have to say, and they probably won't even notice if you make a small mistake here or there.
Exactly. The goal is communication, not perfection. And honestly, using these varied expressions will make you sound more fluent, even if you do make occasional grammar mistakes elsewhere in your speech, because you're using the natural phrases that native speakers use every day.
That's so true. Well, I think we've given everyone plenty to work with today. Johnny, this has been such a fun conversation. I always enjoy it when we can give practical, immediately useful advice that people can start applying right away.
Agreed. And to everyone listening, we'd love to hear from you. What hobbies are you passionate about? Try leaving a comment using some of these new expressions we've discussed today. It's great practice, and we always enjoy learning about what our listeners are interested in.
Yes, please do. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the Native Speakers channel for more practical English lessons like this one. We cover everything from vocabulary and expressions to pronunciation and cultural tips.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep enjoying your hobbies, whatever they may be.
See you next time. Happy learning!